Yo, this is the Ruby Kid. You're watching thespeakerscorner.co.uk.
So, the Ruby Kid, can you tell us who you are and what you do, please?
Sure, I'm a hip-hop artist and a spoken word poet. I've been making music and performing for about 5 years, been writing for a lot longer than that. I host a couple of poetry nights here in London, Outspoken and Howl, and I've performed and gigged and toured all over the country. So that's what I do. Other kind of big things in my life, I'm very politically active. I'm a member of a socialist group called Workers' Liberty. I'm involved in a lot of activist politics, and sometimes get opportunities to put my art to use in that cause as well, doing benefit gigs and stuff like that. So yeah, that's me. I guess hip-hop artist and spoken word poet is the bite-sized version.
Cool, nice, thank you. Now, the name, the Ruby Kid, what's the roots of that, please?
Well, the origin of my name is kind of twofold, really. Firstly, it's because rubies are red, and red is the colour traditionally associated with working class left-wing politics, so there's a resonance there. But also because my family name was originally Rubinstein, but it was changed during the Second World War to make it, or just before the Second World War, to make it less conspicuously Jewish, because that was a bad time to have a conspicuously Jewish sounding name. It was changed to Randall, which is the name I grew up with. But Ruby is obviously short for, well, not obviously, but Ruby is also short for Rubinstein. So the Ruby Kid is both a nod to my politics, my political allegiance with the colour red, but also to my kind of ethnic and cultural heritage, by being a shortening of the name that my family was forced to abandon because of anti-Semitism at that time.
That is massively more interesting than what I was expecting.
What were you expecting? See, most people think it's because I'm ginger, and
I just
think
thought,
it's because I'm a redhead.
It sounds cool, doesn't it? But no, that's interesting, thank you. Now, you mentioned that you do spoken word as well, and we've recorded a piece today also. What's your opinion on the spoken word scene? Because at a glance, it seems that it's growing pretty strongly at the moment. Yeah,
I think it's an extremely exciting time to be involved in spoken word in this country generally, but particularly in London. The scene is kind of burgeoning and beginning to explode, really, in ways that it hasn't in the past. You can see that manifested through the number of new poetry nights that are getting set up, the number of people who are coming to those nights, the type of venues that are looking to book spoken word artists, and some of the coverage and profile that some people in the scene are starting to get. And it's really enthusing and inspiring as a participant in all of that, and as an artist to be involved. Just in terms of the nights that I've been involved either in as a performer or as an organiser, or both, you're starting to see greater numbers of people, and people who previously you might not have expected or assumed would be attracted to a spoken word or poetry night. So I think the scene's in a very healthy place, and it's getting better all the time. It's maturing, it's growing, and it's an exciting moment to be involved in spoken word as an art form in London.
Now, on that note, you run Outspoken, don't you? Now, could you tell people that don't know what Outspoken is and what it's all about? But also, you mentioned Howl, which I don't know, so I'd be interested to hear about that as well.
Well, I run Outspoken. I'm one of the co-founders of Outspoken with Anthony Anaxaguru, who's also a spoken word poet. Outspoken is basically a kind of monthly night of music and poetry performance, and we try to bring together poets and other musicians from a really diverse range of artistic and stylistic backgrounds. And what we're interested in doing with Outspoken is exploring kind of what happens in that space where you kind of collide artists and writers and performers from different backgrounds. So we're interested in getting artists from one particular genre or background, and getting their fans along and getting their people along, and then getting an artist or a poet from a very different background along and getting their people along, and just seeing what happens when you bring some of the diversity that exists within the poetry scene and within the music and performance scene more widely. What happens when you bring some of that diversity together in one place, in one venue, on one bill. Me and Anthony have been running Outspoken since March of this year, since March 2012. We're just about to have our end of year special. That's on the 18th of December. I don't know if this interview will be out by that time, but it's been a great year for us. We've put on a whole number of events and they've all been pretty successful, so we're very much looking forward to 2013. Howl is a much less frequent and rather smaller scale event that I run at the Horse and Groom in Shoreditch. And the idea with Howl really is kind of similar to some of the ideas around Outspoken, and I've used it as a platform to put on to put on and give a stage to some of the artists that I've worked with and that I've been involved in and who speak to me musically and poetically. As I say, I think nights like Howl and Outspoken, you're seeing more and more of them start to crop up. People running spoken word nights, alternative music nights that are bringing poetry and music and other art forms together, which is all exemplary of the way in which the scene is burgeoning in London. So I think Outspoken's success is has both fed into and been fed by that kind of general atmosphere, and it's something I'm very proud to have been a part of.
Now, why do you think it is that the scene is kind of getting bigger and stronger and burgeoning, as you say?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's always difficult to pin down exactly what the reasons are behind a particular artistic community or a particular form of music having a moment of explosion or a moment of expansion or a point at which it really starts to burgeon. And I wouldn't want to go out on too much of a limb as to the reasons why. I mean, I'm sure you could conduct a very interesting sociological and academic study into why it is that spoken word seems to have caught something in the popular imagination. I think on a certain level, the reasons are kind of interesting in the abstract, but from the point of view of those of us who are right in the middle of it, the main task isn't so much to ponderously scratch our heads about why people are suddenly interested in what we're doing. It's to take advantage of the fact that they are, and make sure that interest is maintained and developed. I guess from a political point of view, I think maybe part of the reason is that we're going through very politically febrile times, and in many ways it's a situation that's analogous to an extent to the situation that existed in the 80s, a very aggressive a government with a very aggressive anti-working class set of policies attacking working class living standards, a lot of economic crises, a lot of social upheaval in continental Europe and to a degree in Britain as well. And I think in those moments people are attracted to and interested in art forms and forms of music that allow for kind of very direct expression. I think in the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, that was largely, it was punk. In various times in black communities in America, that's been hip hop. And I think that there's a potential for spoken word poetry to play some of that role now. So whether that is directly a reason that people are being drawn to it in this particular historical moment, I'm not sure, but I think there's certainly a potential for poetry which does have an enormous history of being an art form through which people can give voice to their kind of give voice to their response and their inner feeling to the world around them in a very direct way. Spoken word poetry certainly has an enormous potential in that regard in a period like ours.
You mentioned there rap and hip hop.
Yeah.
Now, given that many people might go, okay, well, spoken word is just rap and hip hop without a beat, because you do both, can you tell us whether you agree with that and what you feel that relationship is between the two?
I mean, I think the relationship between spoken word poetry and hip hop is a very interesting one, particularly from my point of view as an artist involved in both forms. I think the kind of distinction that people often draw, that you've alluded to, that spoken word poetry is just rap without a beat, is a little bit lazy actually, and is not really the case, because what that elides or kind of sweeps to one side is both spoken word poetry which is not, for example, which is not rhyming or which is not in regular meter or cadence, but also hip hop artists and rappers who themselves experiment. You know, there are lots of rappers who do very interesting stuff with cadence, and their stuff isn't always necessarily on beat, and they kind of set up dissonances and discordances between the vocal and the beat. So within hip hop, there's a lot of people experimenting with what the actual kind of process of rapping actually is. So that's not a particularly helpful distinction. I mean, 4 o'clock. Should we wait for him to finish? Okay, done.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, there you go, some traditional Hoxton church bells. Where were we? Yeah, the distinction between spoken word and hip hop. I mean, it's blurred, really. It's a blurred distinction, and there are various points at which the two forms kind of bleed into each other. And again, kind of like your previous question about why it is that spoken word's taking off right now, I'm interested in the distinction between spoken word and hip hop on a kind of abstract level, but I'm not particularly interested in spending too much time or expending very much intellectual energy pondering exactly why it is. I'm more interested in just doing my thing artistically, and that's really that's my exploration of what the differences are, is by performing, doing both things, writing poems, writing to beats, not writing to beats, writing poems and then matching them to beats, writing poems and then performing them over beats they don't really match with, and exploring the kind of dissonance there. That's how I'm interested in kind of grappling with the differences, rather than trying to sit down and work out exactly, okay, what is our rigid definition of this form and what is our rigid definition of that form. Because really, I think, you know, if you look at any artistic development, new forms and the most exciting new forms, the most exciting new developments come at moments of collision, and at moments of exploring the contradictions within and between different forms. I mean, that's my understanding really of how all historical progress, not just artistic progress, is conquered, is through different forms, contradictory forms, internally contradictory forms kind of colliding, and new forms being created out of that collision. And I guess that's part of what I'm trying to do as an artist who has his foot in kind of more than one art form.
So you've got a few things on the go in a few different mediums, like we were discussing then. What's actually happening at the moment? What are your big projects that you're working on?
Cool. Well, I just put out an EP a few weeks ago, which is called Strange, Lively and Commonplace, which is a free to download EP, which people can grab off my website, therubykid.com. That was exciting for me because it was the first time in about 2 years I'd recorded any music of my own. I mean, I'd done a couple of bits and pieces with other rappers, but since the release of my previous EP, Maps, that came out in December 2010, so I'd basically been doing exclusively spoken word poetry for 2 years. So it was fun to record and put out a rap project again. So that's out, people can grab that. I'm in the process of writing and recording another EP with a guy called Eli Immortal, who's a producer and a rapper from a Birmingham duo called HLI. And with HLI and a few other people like Juice Salim, who's a kind of veteran of the UK hip hop scene, we're getting together and forming a kind of sort of DIY label / collective called Spinning Compass, which is going to be putting out some material in 2013. That's quite exciting to be involved in, because it's always good to link and collaborate with people who sort of share your artistic spirit, and all the people involved in that are very much of the view that there needs to be more kind of boundary pushing hip hop that's prepared to take risks in this country, which I think I certainly feel we've been lacking of late. So Spinning Compass Records, you can check out our website, spinningcompassrecords.co.uk. That's coming in 2013 too. And I'm going to carry on with the spoken word stuff as well. Like Outspoken is going from strength to strength. Howl has kind of been on the back burner for a little while, but that's going to come back in 2013. So lots and lots going on, lots to be excited about. Hoping to tour again next year. So lots of irons in, lots of fires, and I guess it's watch this space. Fantastic.
So have you got any parting comments for the people that are watching?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I'll end on a note of thanks to the Speaker's Corner, because I think that any artistic community and artistic scene needs platforms and forums like the one that you guys are providing to give artists an opportunity to get their work out there, to give artists an opportunity to have the kind of discussions that we've been having in this interview. And I think, again, that's another marker, an illustration of how the spoken word scene is starting to burgeon, that websites like yours are starting to crop up. So long may it continue, long may they proliferate and expand. Thank you for having me. And if people want to check out my stuff, it's www.therubykid.com.
Thank you.